these questions will determine whether people have continued faith in globalisation, in multilateralism, in modernity itself, whether they will have confidence in the future. And what all these challenges have in common is that none of them can be addressed by one country or one continent acting alone. None of them can be met and mastered without the world coming together. And none of them can be solved without agreed global rules informed by shared global values. The oil price crisis last year, the financial crisis this year, a climate change crisis every year. It means that we are not at a moment of change, we are in a world of change. 20 years ago, only 1 billion people were part of the world's industrial economy. Now the figure is 4 billion. For centuries, people rarely moved even from their hometown. Now every single year, 200 million people, the equivalent of the whole populations of Britain, Germany and France, move from their country of birth, and next year another 200 million will do so again. In one decade, the majority of the world's manufacturing, for 2 centuries, focused in Europe and America, has shifted to Asia. And the global sourcing of goods, services and capital means we now depend so much on each other that what happens anywhere can have an impact on what happens everywhere. And this raises questions and anxieties for a people about what will happen to them in the future, and what it means for the dreams that their children, the children of the next generation, will do better than the children of the last. And I recognise that for too many families anxious about jobs, worried about mortgages, uncertain about their future, the most important financial summits are those that take place around their kitchen table. And I understand that people feel unsettled and that the pain of this current recession is all too real. And the danger is that in every country, workforces will become so worried that they will try to pull up the drawbridge, turn the clock back and retreat into a dangerous protectionism that in the end protects no one. If people's fears are not addressed, they may choose to walk away from the benefits that the opening up of this world can bring. But managed well, the same globalisation that has brought us so much global insecurity can also bring great opportunity. Over the next 2 decades, millions of people in emerging markets will move from simply being producers of their goods to being consumers of our goods, leading to the world economy doubling in size, with twice as many opportunities for businesses, twice as many round the world middle-class jobs and incomes. And that's why I'm an avowed supporter of open markets, free trade, private capital, and a flexible, inclusive and sustainable globalisation. But let us be honest, the globalisation which has done so much to improve choice, driven down the cost of everything from computers to clothes, which has lifted millions out of poverty, has also unleashed forces that have totally overwhelmed the old national rules and the systems of financial oversight. I've always said I take full responsibility for my actions, but I also know that this crisis is global, its source is global, its scope is global, and its solution will be global. We've seen worldwide changes so fast that they have outpaced people's understanding of them, so that managers sitting in boardrooms were selling financial products they didn't know the value of to traders and investors who didn't know what they were trading and investing in, covered by insurers who didn't know what they were insuring. And complex products like derivatives and securitized loans, which were supposed to disperse risk right across the world, instead spread contagion across that world. And the sensible limits to markets agreed in one country became undermined by global competition between all countries and then a race in standards to the bottom. And instead of banks being as they should be, stewards of people's money, too many of them became speculators with people's futures. And I say to you plainly, this old world of the old Washington consensus is over, and what comes in its place is up to us. Instead of a global free market threatening to descend into a global free for all, we must reshape our global economic system so that it reflects and respects the values that we celebrate in everyday life. For I believe that the unsupervised globalization of our financial markets did not only cross national boundaries, it crossed moral boundaries too. You know, in our families, we raise our children to work hard, to do their best, to do their bit. We don't reward them for taking irresponsible risks that would put them or others in danger. We don't encourage them to seek short-term gratification at the expense of long-term success. And in Britain's small businesses, managers and owners are the enterprising people our country depends upon, and we rightly celebrate. But they do not train their teams to invest recklessly or behave in an underhand way or keep their biggest gambles off their books. Most people have worked hard to build up their firm or shop, understand responsible risk-taking, but don't understand why any company would give rewards for failure or how some people have grown fabulously wealthy making failed bets with other people's money. So it is absurd for those on the extremes to blame the private sector for our problems. What we actually need is the practice of most of our private sector to be adopted by all of our private sector. And our task today is to bring financial markets into closer alignment with the values held by families and business people across the country. Yesterday I said there were 5 tests for our G20 meeting. And the first of that is to clean up the global banking system. Most people want a market that is free, but never values free, a society that is fair, but not laissez-faire, and so across the world our task is to agree global economic rules that reflect our own enduring values. That means rules that make transparent the risks that banks take, rules that bring hedge funds and shadow banking inside the regulatory net, rules that force global banks to hold sufficient capital and ensure their liquidity, rules that require boards who understand their businesses and take responsibility for the decisions they take, and systems of pay and bonuses that reward people for long-term value and not short-term risk-taking. This is the world in which we will have trust, and we can genuinely say again, my word is my bond. Now, let me put markets in context. They can create unrivaled widening of choices and chances, harnessing self-interest to produce results transcending self-interest. When they work